To start off with, I will set the scene, giving some general information on the ERC and the schemes themselves. Then we have Ino Agrafiotti, a research program agent, who together with Jana Sifter, a project advisor, will take you through the application process and how to fill in the application form. And then David Gallego Torres will give you more insights into the evaluation process. We'll take questions and answers, and following that, we'll have a short break. And then Nicole Heine will give you some guidance on the ethics requirements. And Catherine Merola, our financial advisor, will explain how you prepare your budget. As you have seen, we are recording this webinar, and the recording of the session will be available, as well as all of the speakers' slides, and these will be available on the event page of the ERC website. You've also received a whole series of links together with the connection link for this webinar, and this will give you the additional information which many of the presenters will refer to in their presentations. The idea is that this presentation will be as interactive as possible. We would ask that you ask your questions via Slido. We will explain how you do that. Whilst the questions and answer session and the chat session is open in WebEx, we prefer you didn't use that, because when you're using the question, if you write a question in Slido, you'll see the questions which other people have answered. They may be the same question that you want to ask, and you can, through liking those questions, move them higher up the list so that we can be sure that question is answered. So the link to Slido has just been given in the chat. Perhaps you can connect to that now, and when you're ready to ask your questions, you can do so. So you use the QR code, which is now on the screen, from your mobile, or you can go to slido.com and enter the code, which is given on the screen, ERCA. But as I've said, we were waiting for your questions, but I'd like to start off with by knowing who we have here. And I have some questions for you to start off with to see that who we have connecting today. And the first such question, as you'll see coming up on screen now, is which country are you joining from? If you can respond in Slido, we can be sure then that you all can use Slido, and also we get information where you're joining from us today. It's great to see we have people joining us from all over Europe, from member states, from associated countries. That's great to see. Just wait, there's a couple more participants typing, but I see we have a really good attendance from the countries which this webinar is particularly targeted at. So that's great to see. Okay, I have a second question, if my colleagues can move on to the second question, which is, what's your job position? Are you a researcher? Are you a research support? Are you a European advisor? Or I see the first one coming, associate professor. Are you postdocs? Are you PhD students? I see NCPs coming up. Are you a European advisor, project manager? So I see a lot of project manager, research support, EU project managers, also a lot of individual researchers, full professors, financial managers. Well, this is great. This gives us a very good idea who we have in the audience today. It's always difficult when you're working online to get a feeling of the audience. So this is a great way to see who we're speaking to today. Thank you very much. I have one final question, which will also help us in targeting this webinar. How familiar are you with the grant application process for the ERC? Are you very familiar, somewhat familiar, or not familiar at all? Okay, I see that there's some familiarity in the audience, and then still plenty of things to learn. Some of you, it's completely new, and this is great to see. It's good that you're here today and learn about the ERC grants. And those of you who have some familiarity, I'm sure you will learn new things. Those of you who are very familiar, I hope we will also be able to provide you with some new information and guidance as well. So thank you very much to you all for that, for your interaction. I will then just start by providing you with some information on the ERC grants themselves. So let me give you a flavor, first of all, to introduce the workshop so that everyone understands exactly where we are and where we're coming from in the ERC. So as you know, the European Research Council and the opportunities that we provide are through the Horizon Europe budget, which is the framework program for research and innovation of the European Commission. We fall under the first of the three pillars of Horizon Europe. It's known as the Excellence Pillar. And overall, we're about 17% of the entire Horizon Europe budget is dedicated for the ERC, which is about 16 billion euros over the 7 years of the Horizon Europe program. When you look at what we offer, and here I'm sure those of you who marked as being very familiar know this well, but I think it's important to say that what we offer are opportunities for long-term grants in any field of research and innovation. So I think it's important, irrespective of where you're working, what you're doing, we have opportunities for you. So any area of science, humanities, we have grants that are available for you at any stage of your career. The idea is that they are frontier research. So our grants, different to the rest of the framework program, are offered on a bottom-up basis. In terms of what I mean by that is it's you that generate the research question and your proposal. It's not a response to a research question which we have put in place. Currently, we funded over 13,000 top researchers through the ERC since 2007 in over 900 different host institutions. That's the word we use for the organizations where our grants are placed. It could be in universities, it could be in public research centers, private research centers, anywhere across the EU and across the associated countries. When I look at the grant schemes, I referred before to the individual grant schemes, and these are targeted at researchers depending on your level of experience past your PhD. And you'll hear a lot more about this during the presentation. So starting grants are targeted for those who are 2 to 7 years after their PhD, with a grant of up to €1.5 million over 5 years. Consolidated grants for those 7 to 12 years after the PhD, with a grant of up to €2 million for 5 years. And advanced grants is for everyone else, those with a more significant track record of research achievements in the last 10 years. And there the grants are slightly larger, €2.5 million over 5 years. Two things which I think is important to say is these eligibility windows that we talked about, there is flexibility within those allowing for life circumstances. So for issues such as maternity or paternity leave, long-term illness, if you've had clinical training, if you've taken time off for military service and so on. And full details of that are given in the calls for proposals themselves. In addition, the amounts of money shown, there is a possibility to apply for an additional €1 million for certain aspects. So for example, if you're moving from outside of the European Union to the EU or to an associated country, if you need to buy major equipment which cannot be costed within the rest of your grant, for major field work, or for major experimental costs. And again, further information will be given on this later. The grants, 50% of the time needs to be within Europe. And so it allows for dual appointments, should this be an opportunity for you working within the EU and working in a country outside of the EU. We'll not go into a lot of detail in the other two grants which the ERC offers today, but again, if people have questions, we'd be happy to answer them, which are the synergy grants, which unlike the others are not individual grants. They're for 2 to 4 principal investigators to work together on a key area where they need to be able to benefit from the knowledge of the other researchers to be able to proceed and to be able to deliver an ambitious research program. And then also the proof of concept grants, which are available only to existing ERC grant holders, which provide a small amount of funding to bridge the gap between research in the lab and the earlier stage of marketable innovation to get through the valley of death, as it's known, in terms of bringing an idea, a product, or a service to the market. Now, some brand new information for you. The call calendar for 2025. I should state that this is provisional. The Commission is due to adopt the work program which formally sets out the call details next week. We expect these dates will be maintained, but I need to underline these are provisional whilst we expect them to be maintained, but it will give you a good idea of when the calls are expected to open and when the cutoff dates or the deadlines, we use cutoff date for a proof of concept, the deadlines for the other calls are put in place. You see the expected budget and the estimated number of grants that we'll be able to fund. I know many of you are probably now scribbling this down frantically looking for deadlines. Don't worry, all of these slides will be available afterwards, as I've said before. And then finally, where you can find more information, you find more information on our website. I'd also encourage you, if you haven't done so already and you're thinking of putting in applications, or if you're working in a research office, your first point of contact should always be the national contact point. These are formal guidance and advice structures set up by the governments of the countries, of the member states and the associated countries, and indeed in some non-European countries as well. And they're local sources of advice and guidance on all stages of how you apply, and once you are successful, how you manage a grant as well. On my slide, you have links to those actual, our website and to the list of national contact points. So when you receive these slides afterwards, you'll be able to link to those directly. An important website is the Funding and Tenders portal, and that's where all of our calls are published. Then in addition to the national contact points, if you have any questions regarding Horizon Europe or any of the aspects of the application process, you can also come to us directly through the Research Inquiry Service. Then finally, I'd like to thank you in advance for attending this workshop. It's great to see so many of you here today, and you'll receive lots of links today on where you can get more information. This is the first of many, and again, these slides will be sent to you following the webinar. So I'll stop sharing my presentation now, and I will give the floor to my colleagues Ino and to Jana, who will give you a presentation, a very practical presentation on how to write your proposal. So Ino and Jana, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So my name is Ino. I am the LS1 panel coordinator, so that means that I'm from the life sciences. And Jana, she's from the social sciences and humanities. Our colleague David afterwards is from the physical sciences and engineering. So you have a scientific officer from each domain here. So if you have afterwards some more domain specific questions, you can also ask them to us since we are all represented here. We're going to give this presentation as if you are someone who is preparing a proposal to apply to the ERC. Because we understand that it's a very mixed audience from what we saw in the Slido, but it makes a little bit our presentation a bit to flow a bit more easily. And we would also like to emphasize some of the points that as scientific officers, we have found that maybe these are the main reasons why we find that some proposals do not succeed. So as Martin said before, the first thing is to go to this funding and tender portal. This allows you to download all the documents. So please start there. One of the all the documents are important, but this information for applicants is especially important, and make sure that you download it, print it out, and have it by your bedside table. And as Martin said, please get information. You have the NCPs, you have the host institution grants offices. Reach out to ERC grantees. They have been through through the whole process themselves. They will be so happy to share any tips and their experience with you. And of course, if you can contact the ERC, these are the email addresses that are sort of standard. You can see ERC, the date of the call, and then the type of the call and applicants. Then the second step is to choose your panel. This is actually one of the reasons why some proposals do not do so well. It's very important to choose the right one. So we have 28 panels this year. We have even the 28th panel, SH8, was added this year. There were also some changes in LS3 and LS5. But in this information for applicants, you can really see the information, not just the titles of the panels, but also the subtitles and all the descriptors. And why is it important to choose the panel? Just to say that initially we always follow your choice. This is the initial panel where your proposal is allocated. You have the opportunity to add a secondary review panel. In this case, you have to put in your Part B1, I will explain what is Part B1 later. You have to put an explanation to explain to us why you think that you need a review from another panel. There is a case where a proposal can be transferred between panels. This can occur if there is a clear mistake on your part or that the necessary expertise is available in different panel. And both panel chairs have to agree on the transfer. So if it happens to you, it means that there is a real reason. I would like to emphasize that it's important to choose the correct panel, because a lot of proposals, if they are in the wrong panel, they might fare less well.
Yeah, and there are also some rumors maybe about the choosing of the right panel. So the first rumor is that the panel descriptors, they represent ERC scientific priorities. So we wanted just to make it clear that there are no scientific priorities. As you already heard, ERC ideas are bottom up, so it's really about your idea from any area of science that you will come and bring it to the evaluation. I just wanted to say that the panels that you saw, they really have to be interpreted in very flexible and inclusive manner. So there is always an adequate space for cross-panel and also interdisciplinary proposals. As Ino said, there is always space for secondary panel, cross-panel evaluations, or in case it is needed for transfer. And there is a second rumor that you should choose the panel strategically in order to increase your chances. But I just wanted to say, no, choose the panel that best fits your proposals. You saw the list of the panels, so go for the panel that is the closest to the area of your proposal. Because honestly, there is no other strategy than this, because first, the panels, they change, the composition of the panel members, it changes from year to year. So there's absolutely no way to see if the panel will be harsh as last year or soft as last year. There's absolutely, there's no use of this. And then also what is interesting, and maybe you didn't know this, is that the panel budget is distributed among the panelists as a function of demand. So if in a given year there will be more application to LS1, it will also be the LS1 who will get the panel which will get more money. So honestly, choose the best panel that fits your proposal, fits your area of investigation, and that's the only strategy you should use.
Okay, so once you decided your panel, you need to start writing. So what is the application consisting of? It's part A, which is online. There you put your proposal information, your host institution information, your budget, which is evaluated at the second step, ethics information, and call specific questions. In order for you to be eligible for an ERC call, you have to have a statement of support of your host institution. You upload it as an annex, in a PDF form. And if you are applying for a starting and consolidator, you need to upload a copy of your PhD certificate or equivalent. If applicable, you also put the document for extension of the eligibility window and explanatory info on the ethical issues. The parts that the panel members actually see, it's part B1, part B2, and the budget. The information in part A, it's not seen by panel members. However, it's very important for us, and we will explain in the next slide why. So we have these two parts. Part B1, it's the abstract and cross-panel explanation that I mentioned before, the extended synopsis, 5 pages. And here we have some changes because the Scientific Council is really listening to what the community is saying. And based on the feedback that was given, they have made a lot of changes in 2024. So this year, the CV and track record is one part. It's together up to 4 pages. And also the other change is that the funding ID that used to be in part B1, now is in part B2. The reason why is that the reason why the funding ID is part of the application is for the panel to see the commitment of the person. If they have like 5 different projects that are do not allow them to put 30, 40, 50% of their time, then this is problematic. But the commitment is just at part B2. So when it was in part B1, they did not want people to use the funding ID as a measure of success because different people have different opportunities in getting funding, or some people have institutional funding, so they don't need to get external funding. So they thought that this is in order to minimize the so-called Matthew effect. They moved the funding ID to part B2. Okay, so as I said before, very often when we actually do the assignment, we don't actually have access to your part B1. So we really depend on your information in part A. You need to make sure that you put the descriptors and free keywords that really characterize your proposals. So it could influence which panel members will evaluate your proposal. There are a basis of the allocation, and will determine whether a cross-panel review evaluation is necessary. Really make sure that your abstract, it doesn't have to be general, it doesn't have to be abstract. The more information you put in the abstract, the better, because we use this a lot in our allocation to panel members.
And there is also another rumor circulating that the more cross-panel descriptors you indicate, the higher funding chances you will have, because you will somehow emphasize the interdisciplinarity of your proposal. But not, again, this is not true, because this will not help you to make your proposal look better, because the descriptors and the keywords are used by us, the scientific officers and the panel chairs, to better allocate your proposal, to allocate it to the right panel members with the right expertise. But once your proposal is allocated to the right people, the panel members will not see the keywords and not see the descriptors you used. They will only read your CV and your proposal.
Okay, so the biggest changes and the part of the proposal that that the Scientific Council is more proud about now is the CBN track record, that it has been merged. In the past, we used to have no prescriptive principal investigator profiles. We used to say, okay, this is what a starting grantee should look like, what a consolidator grantee should look like, and what an advanced grantee should look like. However, for one reason or another, the Scientific Council found that they disadvantage people for one reason or another. So now there's no such profiles. What is instead there? We have 3 sections. So the first section is personal details. This is like a CV kind of a style, where you just list your education, your qualification, your current positions. A big ask from panels is make sure that you very clearly state who is your PhD supervisor and who is your postdoc supervisor in the case of starting a consolidated grants. This is very important for the panel, instead of them having to go and see it. Here you don't add any extra information. The extra information will be in the 3rd section. So here is just a list of what is your CV. Then the research achievements, up to 10 research achievements, and that there should be recent research achievements and peer recognition. So this, in the past, we used to ask for 5 to 10 publications, 5 in the case of starting and 10 in the case of consolidator and advanced. However, depending on the field, it's not just publications that they are achievements. So here they give you the opportunity to put anything that you see as an achievement. It could be computer code, it could be a preprint, it could be a chapter, it could be a book, it could be a field trip, it could be anything that you want this to be. Make sure that you also put some information that is short and factual, a narrative of why did you pick these things, what was your contribution to this application. Do not just list the 10 with no information. The Scientific Council is giving you the opportunity to really tell your story. As for the peer recognition, apparently there was some debate amongst Scientific Council members whether this should be included or not. It is included. However, do not think that the Scientific Council is going to the panel members are going to expect that someone applying for a starting grant is going to have the same peer recognition as someone applying for an advanced grant. They're not going to expect you to be a keynote speaker in every conference if you apply for a starting grant. It's judged according to your level. And the third section is additional information. There you can put whatever you want. You can put all information, career breaks, diverse career path, life event, and any other noteworthy contributions to the research community. Did you, for example, organize a Women in STEM Day? Did you organize a new course at your university? Did you take part in any local committees? Or this is your chance to put this information here. So when writing your CV and your track record, please use the recommended template with the 3 sections as much as possible so you can make the life of panel members easier to compare between people. Even if, as David will say later, like there's more focus now on the project, the CV and track record is still very important. So do put some time and effort in it, because you need to prove to the panel that you have the expertise that needed to carry out the project. Tell your story, as I said, say some information in the research achievement, in the additional information, explain what is your own contribution, convince the panel that you're at the forefront of your research field, which could mean different things from different people. Are you internationally active? When we meet internationally active, we don't mean mobility. Mobility is not a criterion of the ERC, but do you by any chance have an international collaboration? Have you taken part in an international conference? If you have done that, it's very important that you say that in your track record. Explain your publishing happens in your field or in your country if needed, and describe any other activity in the additional information section. If you have any gaps or other issues, make sure that you say them. You don't want to leave the panel guessing about them.
And again, there are maybe some rumors circulating about your CV and track record. So first of them we often hear is that you can apply for an ERC grant only if you are a highly accomplished researcher. Well, this is not true, because you saw that the definition of accomplishment is really changing according to every discipline and according to your stage. So of course you have to show some capacity, some independence, but of course this differs from stage to stage. For starting grant, it's a bit different to consolidator grant, so the expectations are different. And of course you don't have to accomplish everything when you are on the beginning of your scientific career. And what is also important is that each panel will interpret this as it makes sense in their field, in their area of science, which can also differ. So just be sure that you relate to your scientific field and to what is meant by accomplishment there. The second rumor is that one needs publications in Nature, Science, or other journals with high impact factor. Well, this is also not true, because as you probably know, ERC has signed the DORA, and that means that we really try to downplay as much as possible all the quantitative measures, such as the number of publications, the number of citations, and the impact factors, etc. We really focus on the importance of your contribution to the field and the quality of your proposal. That's really the most important. Then there is another rumor that you have to say and show how many people you are supervising, how many PhDs, how many master students, etc. Well, this is also not true, because Imagine that every country and every scientific institution has different criteria for the PhD supervisors. So for sure, there are countries where you can have your own PhD students only after you accomplish certain stage in your scientific career. It means the habilitation or whatever similar. So this would not be fair to take as a criterion. And the scientific council also agreed that the number of PhD students who are supervised is more a proxy to the scientific environment than the quality of your scientific leadership. So we don't ask for the supervision anymore. And the last rumor is that the quality or the fame of the host institution is increasing or increasing your chances or your score. So this is absolutely not true. The host institution is not an evaluation criterion. We have grantees for small universities, from regional universities, from associated countries. So really the host institution is not an evaluation criterion.
If you want to learn more, please, I would really advise you to go and see this document written by Maria Leptin on behalf of the Scientific Council. They explain exactly why did they make these changes and what were what was their thinking behind. So we have the link here. Go and read it before you start writing your proposal. There were also changes in the research project. So they streamlined the evaluation questions. David, in his presentation later, he will show you what are these questions, but there were two major differences. The first is that there's no explicit reference to high risk, high gain. Instead, they have groundbreaking, ambitious, and feasible. The ERC always encourages risky research. What they found is that it's not necessarily that an ERC grant had to be high risk, high gain. For example, a PI that has some preliminary evidence that shows that this work could be in the right direction, or they have a new technique from that is proven from a different discipline, and based on their expertise that they have shown in the track record, and this is not really such a high risk project, but it will be super high gain. So they want to continue encourage risky research, but it doesn't need to be high risk, high gain. So there's no reference for that. And then the other thing that used to be there used to be a question where the project it has helped developing any novel methodologies. Novel methodology is an element that can be positive, but it's not strictly necessary. You can have amazing research with state-of-the-art techniques, or you can have very bad research with completely novel methodologies. So now there is no more a question about that. Okay, so a big question is what part B1 is and what part B2 is and what is the difference? So it's $1 million question in a way, but let's start from the beginning. So part B1 is really about finding the right balance. The step one discussions are based on the remote assessment of part B1, which consists of, as we said before, the synopsis and the track record CV. This is seen only by BANA members, as David will also tell you later. And what they asked for, they have to see feasibility. So part B1 gives the first impression of your project, of yourself. It is very important because it does determine if you pass to step 2. But what we would like to emphasize is that the synopsis part is really a synopsis of the project. So it should include all the main elements. It should include what are your aims. It should include something that has to do with your risk assessment. It should include some kind of information about like what kind of collaborations or people you're going to hire. And please make sure that you use the full space available. What I see very often is people from widening countries or associated countries, they don't use the full space. If you're not excited enough to write 5 pages about your project, why should the panel be excited to bring you to the interview? So questions to ask yourself. So once you've written your part B1, make sure that you have some answers to this kind of question. So why is your project new? What is the innovation in it? Have you provided any new solutions theories? Do you promise to substantially go beyond the state of the art? Your idea should need an ERC to do it. It should be 5 years. You don't want the panel to say that your project is incremental or that the project could be funded by a national grant. It has to need really 5 years to do it. You have to think big. Why is it important? Not just what you're planning to do, but how is the field going to change once you've done what you say you're going to do? Is it timely? Have a section. Why wasn't it done in the past? And then, so have you supported your case? Do you have a hypothesis? I have to say, in the life sciences, if you have a hypothesis, you have more chances of success. Panelists do like you to think of what could be the case. Do you have any supporting evidence? Have you found something in the literature that points you towards the direction? As I said, at step one, they look at feasibility. They want, at the same time, your goals have to be realistic. And this is one of the reasons why we find that projects get sometimes rejected. They're either far too risky and there's not any evidence that shows that this could happen, or they're not risky enough. So you have to talk about risk. Of course, risk, it doesn't have to be the whole project. Like there could be some parts that have less risk, some parts that have medium risk, some that have high risk. So you have to make sure that you explain this, and make sure that you do and redo your work packages in order to, or whatever you call them, aims, objectives, that you're fully convinced. You don't want all your risk to be in work package one, because the panel will say, okay, if the work package one doesn't work, then the project will fail. And mention that you have thought a little bit about alternatives as well. Like, of course, you don't have the space to go on about, but mention that you think, because it shows that you have some maturity. Of course, why are you the best only person to carry this out? Make sure that you know your competitors, make sure that you know what you have different from them in the field. And have you given a realistic picture of your collaborators? Do mention them. Of course, they might not get some funding from this project, so you have to say, okay, why you're leading your project, how is the collaboration going to work. And attention, in part A, you're going to have to click a little box that says that you have your consent of your collaborations before the submission deadline. A simple email is okay. You don't need to put it as an annex. You just need to have it in your mailbox.
Yeah, and then there is again something to remind you. So the rumors about writing the proposal. First, I need preliminary results. No, you don't need preliminary results. It's quite logical when you are in the beginning of your research, you don't have the research or results yet. But of course, if you have them, you can show some preliminary evidence. But what is maybe the more important is to show that really you built your hypothesis well. So there is a literature that supports your hypothesis or contradicts your hypothesis. This is really very important to build your proposal on the quality literature review. And also, to be successful, you need to continue an established research line to prove continuity and credibility. No, basically, the opposite is true, because as you have already heard many times, so you have to have a bright, exciting idea, but ERC is not funding incremental research. So you should really be starting with something brand new, something groundbreaking, and not a continuation of what you or somebody else have already done before. Then there is also the question that if you have already obtained an ERC grant before, you are less or more likely to get another one. No, this is absolutely not true, and there is absolutely no relation between being an ERC grantee once and then being an ERC grantee again, because each panel looks at each proposal as a new one proposal on its own merit and in comparison with other applications in the same call year. So you don't have to be afraid of this. And also each submission is really unique. And the same is true for resubmissions. So if you resubmit, it's always your proposal, your resubmission is always taken as a completely new proposal, a new submission. Nobody knows it's a resubmission, nobody mentions it, nobody sees it. So that's really not the problem. And then the last thing I wanted to remind you is that some people think that the more socially, medically relevant is your proposal, the higher are the chances of getting funded. But also, this is not true. ERC is really trying to find the most brightest ideas, the frontier research, and the most groundbreaking ideas. So the social or medical relevance is not important, and it's not well, it's not important, maybe it's not the right way to say it, but it's not an evaluation criteria, which of course doesn't mean that it's not important, because there are many ERC projects that are socially or clinically relevant, but it's not an evaluation criteria. If you start with a completely theoretical proposal, that's also okay.
Okay, so part B2, it's for filling in the information. So step 2 interview and discussions are based on the remote assessment of both parts B1 and B2 by panel members, and this time also by external reviewers that are expert in your fields. In step 1, they're asked to look at methodology. So because panel members have really read very well part B1 at the step 1, and in order for them to fight for you to go to step 2, now they know about part B1. So when they will read part B2, they want something new to read. They don't want to have a repetition. So and in the case of external reviewers, they are reading part B1 and 2 consecutively. So you try and do as little as repetition as possible in part B2. Make sure that there's an obvious link between part B1 and part B2. There's a lot of debate out there whether you should start with part B1 or part B2. What we see very often is that a lot of people put so much effort in part B1 because, as I said before, part B1 is the one that leads you to step 2. And then part B2 is like, it's a flop, and you don't want panel members to be very disappointed, to be like, oh, I was really enthusiastic in part B1, but part B2. So make sure that they are both really well made. Mm. Uh, Okay, so further explain your hypothesis, provide any supporting evidence if it exists, show you that you did your homework. Like if you're in a life science kind of thing, so that what are the quantitative differences, what are the qualitative differences to the state of the art, that they are clear. Make sure that your literature summary is complete as possible. You don't want external reviewers to say, yeah, but they're not, the literature survey is not complete, and then this group has done this and this group has done that. Make sure that you have done your homework. Provide all the more information on the alternative strategies to mitigate the risks. Put some sort of timeline. We know that this is frontier research. We know that most likely things are not going to work according to this timeline, but panels like to say timeline. So do not give them the opportunity to say there's no timeline. Think of the project as a team. Explain exactly how the team members are going to be involved, how the collaborators are going to be involved. Be careful. Again, the ERC's proposals are not consortium proposals. As before, use the full space available, 14 pages. We do see often proposals that are less. Make sure that you give full references. We used to see in the past references that were 5 point font size. No, full references are excluded from the page cloud. So put them in nice big letters so the panel members can actually read them. And as I said at the beginning, the funding ID is now in part B2. So make sure that you fill it fully. I've put this slide. This is for both B1 and B2. Make sure that you respect the reader so that the reader can respect you. Panel members, they get really annoyed if the proposals are not easy to read and attractive. Make sure that you use paragraphs and correct typos. You don't need to be a native speaker in order to do that. Do not submit documents in track changes. I see proposals that are in track changes. I mean, do not do that. Avoid jargon, especially in part B1, because the panel members they are generalists. Do not use excessive highlighting. That means that we see proposals that in the same sentence you have bold, underline, italic, colors. Then it gets too much. Do not oversell it. Panel members and are able to judge if what you're suggesting is true or not. Check the coherence of figures and tables. Make sure that when you say figure 2 is figure 2 and table 3 is table 3. And make sure that there is legends for both the figures and the tables that are also clear. They're not on the outside of the page, and that the figure axes are clearly visible. So these are things that panel members, we hear them all the time. Oh, they're not doing this. Again, they're not doing this. So please make sure that you follow these things. The third part of the proposal is in the normal calls in step 2 and in synergy in step 2 is the budget. Okay, so panelists have to look at have the possibility to look at the resources. They do not cut across the board. They do not cut across all proposals to be funded. The costs are often cut if they are not explained. The panels do not micromanage project finances. And awards are made on take it or leave it. If you don't like what you were given, then there's no negotiations. Here, a very important point: when you ask for open access, make sure that you ask for open access cost, not just for the publications, because this is what we think automatically, but also for data, because in Horizon Europe, you are also obliged to have a data management plan and to think about how you're going to deal with your data. So if you need funding for that, you should also put it in your budget.
Yeah, and again, there are some rumors so about the budget. The first one is if I do not ask for a large sum, I have no chances. Only complex and expensive projects get funded. No, again, this is absolutely not true because, of course, each discipline has different needs. So there is absolutely no use in inflating your budget. And of course, no grant was ever rejected for asking too few funds. So please just consider what you really need for your research and do not inflate artificially. And the second rumor, ask for funding beyond the max, the panel will anyhow cut it down. Well, this is also not true because there can be some cuts, but these only apply to really unexplained or ill-motivated requests. So if you artificially inflate your budget, yes, this might happen. But on the other hand, I just wanted to remind you that you still have the possibility and the right to ask for an extra 1 million of funding in some cases. And it's in case that you are moving to Europe from outside of Europe, or you need some extra facilities, extra research infrastructures, or you need some extra equipment, or the last one is if you are planning for an extra expensive field work, field research. So these are the cases when you can really ask for more money, but please do not do this artificially, and everything has to be based and well motivated, well explained in this part about the budget.
In 2024, as if all these changes that we told you are not enough, we also have one more change, which is in the advanced grant call, where they did the pilot, they're using the pilot lump sum model. I'm not going to talk about it at all. There was a seminar on the 7th of June, and there's going to be another one on the 17th of August. And here I have the link to the YouTube link. Okay, so the final step, you submit. Please submit a couple of days before, not the day, because you never know what our servers are going to do, what your servers are going to do, and then you can keep putting a submission and overwriting the previous one. So once you submit, all you need to do is wait. I say this here, if it was me, the next day, what I would do, I would start preparing some new data, like to show at the interview. But this is me. So it's your turn. So it's our turn to do the work. And now a summary of the reasons for
Yeah,
rejection.
it's very hard to sum up a typical reasons for rejections because of course they differ from panel to panel, but these are really the most often mentioned reasons for rejection. So as regards to the research project, first of the reasons is that the scope is either too narrow or too broad. I think this is something already Ino said. So you should really make sure that you're not asking to save all the problems of the world in within 5 years, but on the other hand, it should not be too narrow. I know this is very hard to define, this is very hard to find, but we trust you and we trust you that you will find the right balance in this. Second reason, which is very, very important, is the incremental research. As I already said, ERC is not funding the incremental research, so please make sure that your idea is new, that you really bring something that has not been investigated before, or it has not been investigated from your point of view or with your methodology. So it really has to be something new, and it should not be a continuation of work you have already done for 20 years before or somebody else. Then what is also important is that the ERC is not funding collaborative projects, so it should be really you as a PI who are the main researcher behind this idea. Of course, you will have your collaborators. Of course, you can have your board of contributors, you can have your team, PhD students, collaborators, but you are the most important person and the grant goes only to you. Then another quite often mentioned reason for rejection is that the work plan is not detailed enough. I know that it's very hard to put many details into part B1 when it's only 5 pages long. But of course, you have to explain to the panel members how you are planning to do your research, how you are planning to do your work, which methods you are going to use, etc. It doesn't have to be very detailed, but you have to show them how you are going to do your work, your research. Another reason is, which goes hand in hand with this, is that the hypothesis and the objectives are not clear or are not clearly explained. Please make sure that you explain it in a way that even a generalist will understand, because in step 1, your proposal is read by a generalist. But again, this has to be clear. It has to be easy to read, easy to understand. And then also spoke about risk management when there is insufficient risk management. Again, the proposal has to show that you know how to mitigate some risk. It doesn't have to be very detailed in part B1. It should be more detailed in part B2, but please just show the panel members, show the evaluators that you know that there should be some problems, that you know that there should be some risk. For example, you are planning a case study in a country which will have some problems, or you will not be able to access the country, so you can show that you have a possibility to do your case study in a similar country, in a different country, or in case you are planning to use some kind of data from a database and this database will not be available for you, please show that you can also get a similar data from somewhere else. These are the kind of risk management I'm thinking about. It doesn't have to be detailed, it doesn't have to be a plan B for another 15 pages, but show that in case something goes wrong, you think about it and you know what to do. And also in part B2, you should really focus on your detailed methodology. So how many people you are going to interview, who is going to do the interviewing, etc. And details like this. So these are, I would say, the most often mentioned reasons for the rejection of the project proposal. And maybe one more, which I forgot, is really the lack of knowledge of the state of the art. You really have to show that you did your homework and you know the state of the art in the field or in your niche research area that you are working in, and that you know your competitors, that you know who else is in the field and what they are doing. And as regards the principal investigator, sometimes it's really the insufficient track record or insufficient achievements regarding the stage of your scientific career, and also lack of independence. Of course, you may have many publications that are co-authored, but please show that you are also an independent researchers and that you have some publications on some work done by you as the main researcher or you as the only author. And also a problem might be that there is the expertise in one area only, but you are asking for an interdisciplinary proposal. This is not a problem, but in this case, please show that in your team there will be somebody who has the expertise in the second area of your research when it's an interdisciplinary proposal, and it's absolutely no problem. Just don't show that you know it all. Show that you will really find the right people to collaborate with. And then the last but not the least, if rejected, don't give up. Keep trying, because the statistics shows that really reapplications have a higher success rate. So it really makes sense not to give up and reapply. And also, you have a unique chance to use the feedback from the evaluation reports, because when you are rejected, you will get all the reports, you will get the panel comments, so you can really look through the comments, you can go through it, and you can benefit of using the feedback from the evaluation reports for your next or for your revised proposal for the next time.
I had put here what one of the reasons of rejection is that you did not apply. So make sure that you apply.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there is one last rumor last rumor that I wanted to say, that this is absolutely not true. And that is, you should not wait for the last minute. You should not wait until you accumulate enough seniority and then you will be competitive. No, it is not true, because see, the success rate is virtually flat across the eligibility windows, especially for starting and COC. And what is also important, do not forget that there are resubmission restrictions. So if you get a B, you cannot apply for 1 year. And if you get a C, you have to wait for 2 years. So it also, what can happen is that you will not be able to apply in the same call if you wait too long. So really just go for it, try it when you feel you're ready, and don't postpone too much.
So yeah, this is our message with Jana. Like, please, like, if you don't try it, you will never know. So if you want to get an ERC grant, you have to please go and apply. We're waiting for your proposal, and we're going to make sure that everything goes as well procedurally with it, and we'll give you equal chances. So looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ino and Diana, and I hope that's given everybody food for thought in terms of how best to prepare their application. I would encourage those of you who haven't taken the opportunity to ask questions to do so via Slido. The link is given in the chat, and we'll share the screen now with some of the questions. We'll take the questions and answers following the next presentation, though, but so you can see already some of the examples of the questions on the screen. If you are unsure how to access the Slido, the link is given in the chat, slido.com, and the code is ERCEA, as you see in the chat. So now I'd like to give the floor to David Gallego, who will take you through the evaluation process for ERC grants. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'll start sharing my presentation. I hope you can all see it. Okay, so I will move to the next step, which is the evaluation process. And as has already been mentioned, the ERC has just one submission, but it's actually a two-step evaluation. So you submit all the documentations, all the part B1 and B2 at the same time, but the evaluation takes place in two steps. You have reached all the final moment, so you prepare all your documents and you press the submit button. And that is when we start to work, as Ina just said. However, I suggest you don't completely disconnect, because there is also some eligibility checks to verify that all the documents are correct. So you may receive some notification that you need to clarify one of the documents. So don't just disconnect, but in any case, this is the kicking point. The race started with our evaluation system. And the first point is assignment of the proposals to the appropriate reviewers. In the previous presentation, you've seen that there is an important part, which is describing your proposal in terms of keywords, and also the abstract is what the basis for our work to assign the proposal to the appropriate reviewers. In some cases, there might be transfers to other panels, but this is very unlikely, and only if there is a real consensus that your proposal should be evaluated or should be better evaluated in a different panel. But we based the assignment on the keywords and the abstract to allow to give the best reviewers to your proposal. We also include reviewers from other panels, what we call cross-panel reviewers, in case we see that there is a clear multidisciplinary proposal. There's also a first or a second step of screening of conflict of interest. We run some checks ourselves internally to detect some cases of conflict of interest, most likely related to the reviewer being in your host institution, and even if there are some recent collaboration, but it's also up to the reviewer to declare the conflict of interest. This is very important for our evaluation because we need to keep transparency, and this is a standard of quality in the ERC evaluation process. I would also mention that you have also the chance to nominate excluded reviewers, to reviewers that you prefer not to review your proposal. These can be also included in your submission. Once all the proposals are assigned to the different reviewers, they start writing the individual reviews. So this is a remote work. Each of the reviewer is working at the host institution, comfortably at home, so they provide completely independent and individual assessment of your proposal. As I mentioned, there would be panel members, people from your expertise, from the panel that you have chosen to submit your evaluation, your proposal to, and these cross-panel reviews. But overall, they would all provide generalist reviews, because if they are assessing only the synopsis, the part B1 of the proposal. This has already been mentioned by Ino, but I will refresh a little bit the novelties in the evaluation process. The ERC gives the only criterion of scientific excellence. We have removed the high risk, high gain, but this is really a change of the words, but not of the concept. The risk can be interpreted differently, but the scientific risk is the novelty. So the primary focus is on the proposed research, on the ambition, on the groundbreaking nature, and the principal investigator is also assessed. But the novelty is that the principal investigator or the applicant is evaluated only on their capacity and their independence to carry out the proposed research. So it's not a competition of who has the best CV. You just have to demonstrate that you are able to carry out the research you are proposing. And actually, the step one, the phase one evaluation, consists only on very simple questions, very simple and at the same time very difficult. First one, what is the grant challenge? What is the big breakthrough that you're aiming for? Second, can you demonstrate that this is really novel? And third, can you demonstrate that this is doable, that you are capable of doing it, it is feasible? And related to the candidate, to the principal investigator, are you able to demonstrate that you're able to conduct this research? And can you demonstrate that you have the independence and creative thinking, scientific independence to do this research? So with these simple questions, we have all the individual reviews. We gather all the reviews from panel members, from cross-panel reviews, and we send to the entire panel, and we ask the whole panel to familiarize with all proposals and with all the reviews. During this homework, we start with the first meeting, with the step one panel meeting evaluation. The whole panel gathers and they discuss all the proposal and they propose a ranking. The ranking at step one consists on three main categories, A, B's, and C's. But as you can see in the slide, there are two types of A's. Overall, A means the proposal is of excellent quality and deserves to pass to step two. B means the proposal is of good quality, but not enough to pass to step two. And the C means, well, the proposal is not really that high quality, is not up to the standards of the ERC, and maybe also the candidate has not demonstrated enough independence or enough scientific expertise to carry out the proposed project. But as you can see, there are two types of A's. This is only for logistic reasons. We cannot accommodate more than 44 interviews at step two. For this reason, the Scientific Council introduced this maximum of 44 proposals passed to step two, and the rest of proposals that have shown the potential to be at step two, but they cannot be accommodated. They obtain the rank A, not invited, but they don't have any resubmission restriction, so they can apply immediately on the following call. Unfortunately, the B proposal, as Jana mentioned, they have to wait for 1 year before resubmission, and the C proposals have to wait for 2 years before resubmitting. All proposals that are not invited to step 2 will receive feedback. All the applicants will receive the full reviews. And this is also something quite unique from the ERC, is that you will receive all the reviews. And the ones that are invited to the second step, they will receive external reviewers. These external reviewers are nominated by the panel, the evaluating panel, and they look for experts in the field, real expert to know your project. That is why also there's the part B2 of the proposal, which is also assessed at step 2. In that part, you can go into the details because there will be expert assessing it. And we will get, again, all individual reviews from some of the panel members and from these remote referees expert. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, you receive an invitation to the interview, but now you have to prepare for the interview. Now what? What should I do if I want to really be ready for the interview? First of all, focus on the science. Do not speak too much about your own CV because the panel has seen it. Focus on the science. Focus on the most exciting part of your project. You will have the chance to give a very short presentation, and this presentation has to really highlight the importance of your project, the novelty. And then this will be followed by questions and answers. So avoid overselling. This has been also mentioned, but let your science speak for you. Do not just blah, blah, blah about how good you are and how your research is. Demonstrate it with fact. Don't just read your presentation. This gives a bad impression that you're not in charge, that you are somehow being the voice of somebody else. Prepare for the presentation. And prepare also for the questions and answers. Anticipate the questions. Maybe you are fully aware that some parts of your project are particularly difficult. You can be sure that you will be asked questions about this. Maybe you're even aware that some parts of your proposal are a bit provocative. You will get questions about it. So get ready for all this. And don't forget also to be ready for questions regarding the budget. In case you are asking for extra budget or the budget is not fully addressing your proposal, you will receive questions also regarding budget. Test yourself. Ask your colleagues for feedback. Try to make some mock interviews. This is the best way to prepare. And in short, in just 3 words, practice, practice, and practice. Once you have done all your homework and we have received all the individuals' review, we have I have to mention the question for the step 2 are basically the same. So the remote reviewers will also have to reply to the same question as for step 1. And there are only 2 new questions proposed for the step 2, which are methodology, working arrangement, and timescale, resources, team. So anything that is really related to the scientific program, to the distribution of your task and the progress of your research. With all these individual reviews, we move to the step 2 meeting. Again, the panel will meet, and in this case, they will have interviews, discussion, and ranking. So you will be invited for an interview. These interviews are taking place remotely, so you will be connected. Make sure that you have a good connection, that you have a quiet space, that you have a comfortable environment, and the evaluating panel will be gathered in a room and will connect to you remotely. Then this will be followed by a discussion and again a ranking. The ranking as step 2 is only 2 categories, again divided in 3 subcategories. A is funded, A is non-funded because there are not enough budget, and B, meaning that the proposal is not quite ready to be funded, but they don't have any resubmission restriction. So all proposals invited for the interview can reapply immediately the year after. After the ranking has finalized, then the panel will do the budget checks. I highlight this, the budget is not taking part of the scientific evaluation of the proposal. The budget is checked only when the ranking is finished. And again, you will all receive all the feedback, all the individual reviews, and the summary or the panel comment, which is a summary of the discussion in the panel meeting. Very quickly, some myths and mistakes about the interview. We can all think that, okay, English native speakers, they have a clear advantage. This is not really true. And we can also see it here in this webinar from the participants and the speakers in this webinar. The native English speakers are a real minority. We are all from different countries, and our panels are all people from many different countries with different languages, with different accents, and we expect our applicants to be similar from different countries with different accents. Another myth, projects starting with letter A in the acronym, you can say A, Z, whatever, they have better chances to get funded. This is not true. There is quite a big randomization when we start preparing the interview schedule. So don't be tempted to use it as an acronym ABCD because it doesn't really make any sense. Actually, a couple of more comments regarding the acronym. It doesn't have to be a real acronym, meaning the first letter from each word of your proposal title. It can be just a short name, anything that is easy to remember, because when the panel has to discuss 100 proposals, it's difficult to remember some of the acronyms when they are particularly complicated. And just a small tip of advice, avoid using impolite words as acronym. It may sound a little strange, but we have cases that the acronym is something that is not really very nice to hear. Another myth, interviews scheduled late in the afternoon or late in the week are less successful. Well, you can imagine, you can picture the panel as in this picture, all the panel members sleeping. This is not true. The panels are excited about science. They are all scientists. And they are excited about your proposal because that's why you have been invited to the interview. So you have to keep up this excitement, and they will be excited because they are interested in what you are saying. Some of the most frequent mistakes, you look unsure or unconvinced about your own project. So you don't look as being in charge on the driving seat of the whole proposal. Of course, you can use collaborators. Of course, there are some aspect of the proposal that somehow depends on these collaborators, but you are the one in charge of the whole project. So you have to show that you can manage the whole project. During the interview, you may give vague and really long answer, and this is what really brings your panel to this situation that they fall asleep. Try to be concise, brief, objective, and confident of your reply. Another frequent mistake, either you are unaware of recent development or you even want to hide somehow the recent development. Again, the panel are expert scientists, they are up to date. And don't be afraid and don't hide if you have some very recent development yourself in the field. This can be a supporting evidence for your proposal. So this is the end of my presentation, and I will be happy to reply to your questions.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks to our three speakers. I see we have a lot of questions already on Slido, so there's a lot of interest to be able to ask questions directly to the panel members. If I can ask my colleagues perhaps to share those on screen, and we'll start directly with some of the questions that have been asked. If I can ask my colleagues to be short and brief in your responses so we can get through as many of these questions as possible. So to start off, maybe Jana, I can come to you with the first question because it's something you discussed.
Yep.
If our proposal gets rejected, do we get constructive feedback to improve for next year?
Yes. That's it. You will get the panel comments, you will get all the individual evaluation reports. Everything's there.
Thank you. Then, if I turn to you regarding deliverables in the work plan, do we have to clearly state and define deliverables like the rest of Horizon Europe proposals?
No. We are not like the rest. You don't need to have the deliverables and milestones. And also, I would like another mistake that I see very often is that a lot of people put a work package on management and dissemination. This is also not something that we expect in an ERC proposal.
Thanks, David, if I can come to you, is it an advantage to indicate more panels for interdisciplinary proposals?
No, the important thing is that you describe your real scientific proposal, but interdisciplinarity does not give you any bigger chance. And in any case, the panel and the evaluators will read the proposal and will decide if they are really interdisciplinary or not.
Thank you, David. Come back to you. If I'm employed by a university, can an ERC grant buy me out of teaching, or do I need to teach and carry out an ERC grant at the same time?
So this is something for you to negotiate with your host institution when you're preparing your proposal and your budget. So this has to do. So for example, we see often that PIs, they put a part of their salary on the grant, and we know that this is in order for them to replace them from the teaching. But this is something for you to negotiate with the host institution.
Thanks, very clear. Can I come then to Jana? Can I have multiple collaborators across Europe and the associated countries to collect data sets relevant for my consolidated grant proposal?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, very clear. David, can you please give more details about the novel methodology requirement that was mentioned earlier?
I think the question refers to the not needing a novel methodology. So, of course, novelty in a scientific project comes from very different places. So you can use the same methodology, but explore a completely different hypothesis. And you can put the emphasis on a specific problem that is not solved, and you propose a completely novel methodology to reach that goal. But not all proposals need to have a novel methodology.
Thanks, David. I come back to you. If I'm applying engineering approaches to prevent some diseases, should I apply in LS or in PE?
It depends on where the innovation is. If the innovation is in the engineering approach itself, I would say you go to PE. If the innovation is using an engineering approach that has never been used in a specific disease, then the LS people will better understand the impact and the implication. They will know more about the disease. So I would say go to LS.
Thank you. Indeed, it's about which panel members will be most excited on the most innovative part of your proposal. Jana, I come to you. Does the project need to be a full 5 years? What are the chances of success if the project is planned to last for 2 to 3 years?
This is a very interesting question because, of course, it doesn't have to be full years. There's no need to ask for full years, but this happens very well. I have seen one in my career in ERC. So no, it doesn't, like there's no use to be 5 years, but it has nothing to do with the chances for success.
Indeed, I think our shortest project is an 18-month COG project, but as Jana says, it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Most of them are longer and nearer to the 5 years. David, if I come to you, will I have more chance to win an ERC grant if my beneficiary, if my host institution is located in the Western Balkans or in the EU?
As has been mentioned before, the host institution is not an evaluation criterion. So it may sound strange that we are encouraging submission from these widening countries, but it's not an evaluation criteria.
Thank you. Then question, you mentioned this already. If I have preliminary data, do I include them in part B1 or in part B2?
Well, I would say that you need to, some of it should be part B1 because you need to convince the panel about feasibility. So if this data is convincing, then you should put, but it's up to you how to decide. But I would say you put some in part B1. A lot of people say, oh, you can see my preliminary data all in part B2. Then this doesn't go really well with the panel all the time.
No, and I think that's something to underline. Remember, the panels don't see part B2 in step 1. So if you make a cross-reference, say all of this is in part B2 in your B1, that doesn't help you at all because the panels at that stage are not reading part B2. Jan, I come to you. Could you please clarify the resubmission restrictions? 1 year if B and 2 years if C. It means you can apply for year +2 and year +3 if you get a B or a C.
Absolutely, exactly as you have written in your question. That's it.
Thank you. And maybe I'll come straight to you with the next question. In consolidated, if my proposal is rejected this year, can I improve the project and apply the next year?
Well, it depends with what kind of grade it has been rejected. Yeah, if it was during step 1B, you have to wait 1 year. C, you have to wait 2 years. And if it was already during step 2, then yeah, you can reapply in the next call. So it depends. Yeah.
Indeed. So it depends if it's rejected at step 1 or at step 2.
Yeah.
David, I come to you. ERC has signed DORA. How do you ensure the panel members follow these recommendations?
That's part of our job during the panel meeting. All the scientific officers, the one here, Ino, Jana, and me, we are observing and, let's say, managing the panel meeting. And we make sure that the panel does not deviate from the evaluation criteria.
Yes.
Thank you. Very clear. Jana, I come to you because it's a question on humanities.
Mm-hmm.
A consolidated grant in humanities, what's the approximate optimal research team size?
Well, it depends on the kind of research, but if you really want an answer, I would say 4 or 5 people.
Okay, thank you. Then a very interesting question, if I come to you, what's the basis that the external reviewers in step 2 are chosen on? Keywords, abstract, B1, what else?
Well, at that point, they have really read the B1 very, very carefully. So what they try to do is that they really want to find external reviewers from all different sides of the project, and they look at the people that you have referenced. They have looked at who are also the top people in the field, and we actually have I think I am allowed to say we have a tool, an IT tool called Profi, that is helping them also find these remote reviewers.
Thanks enough. Then a question on collaboration. Is there a chance to win an ERC grant without collaboration or collaboration within somebody's own country? David, if I come to you on that.
Yeah, sure. Collaborations are not required, and that is not a requirement. If you think you can do it on your own, and again, this really very much depends on the field. We have to go to the extremes. Mathematicians, they usually work alone. Other fields of research, they are much more collaborative, and they need to rely on other people.
Thanks. And maybe there is a follow-up, David, for you on this. Can you give us an example of describing collaborations? Do you mean postdoc A will do this, postdoc B will do this? It's referring to something which Ina mentioned during her presentation, but David, I come to you on that. It follows up well.
Okay, yeah, the collaboration are strictly collaboration. So there's I would say a thin line, there is not so thin, between a multi-PI project and collaborators. If you are applying for a project with multiple PIs, they are completely, well, they integrate, but they are, let's say, independent. In these schemes that we are mentioning here, they are individual grants. So the PI is just one and has to supervise and be in charge of the whole project. But that doesn't mean that the PI has all the expertise, especially if there is some kind of multi or interdisciplinarity. There are some aspects that the PI cannot feel 100% comfortable. So they need to ask a collaborator, which is usually a senior researcher or any kind of researcher. Yeah.
Thanks very
So
much.
collaborators, we mean outside the team, because they mentioned postdocs, so the people inside the team, they're also collaborating, but they're inside the team.
And Ina, maybe explain a little bit more about how you would describe that. You talked about the team members when you were giving your presentation, how the roles of the team members should be set out a little.
So, for example, you have, say, 3 aims, and you're planning to hire 2 postdocs, a technician and a PhD student. You should say, okay, this part is like the most high risk, so it's going to be me as a PI and the postdoc that are going to work on that. This is aim 2 is a bit less risky. I'm going to give it to the PhD student, and then they will be helped a little bit by postdoc number 2 or by the technician. And aim number 3 is going to be the PhD student with myself. So you have to say, okay, each part, why did you choose to put whom in its aim?
Thanks, Normally at this stage we'd be having a break, but I think it's useful to go through all of these questions if our panelists are okay. I think we've still got a number of questions to answer, and I think it's good that we have so many. So one of the questions, are there any good practices of successful projects that could be made available to us? Jana, I'll turn to you, but maybe I could just point out first that all of the projects which we fund, the details of the project and the abstract of that project are available on our website. We'll give the links to it through the Cordis website, so you can get a flavour from the abstract of the type of project and the ambition that's been put in place. Of course, the full text of proposals are not available because that would be confidential. You may, within your own host institution or with collaborators may be able to ask people to share examples. That's your networking and your ability to work with other people, but the abstracts and the details of the proposals are given on our websites. But Jana, I don't know if there's anything else in terms of good practice of successful projects that you'd like to.
With the successful projects, I understand what you mean by this question. I understand this very well. And no, of course, they are not public, but usually, I would say 99%, when you approach the PI with your email, with a personal email, and you ask for help, they are really very willing to help. ERC Grants is something like a big family. And once they have their grant, they are always willing to help. I think I haven't met a case when there was somebody who really rejected to help somebody who works in the same area and is interested in their grant. So that's the, and then of course in different countries we have different support groups, and there are groups that are working on draft of proposals, etc. I know this is true for Czechia, but you have to ask your NCPs and you have to ask your university if this is something like this, like reading clubs or supportive groups for writing ERC proposals are available.
Thanks, Jana. And indeed, that's a great idea to contact your NCP on exactly this issue. They will probably be able to direct you to previous successful grantees in your own organization or an organization within your country or your region. Can I turn to you on eligibility windows? What date do we use?
PhD defense. We clarified this 2 years ago because we used to find that people really could have given us a piece of paper that was 2 years after, not just 3 months, as you say here. So now we use PhD defense of the first PhD.
Thank you. Very clear. David, come to you. What is a sufficient track record for an advanced grant candidate?
Well, the threshold used to be minimum 10 years of record of excellent science, of science. So yeah, I would say anything that is beyond starting grant and consolidator. So you need and in terms of quantitative track record, well, I dare not to give a straight reply because it depends very much on the field, but you have to prove that you have a solid career for 10 years.
Thanks very much, David. I come to you, it's a question on life sciences. I understand requirements are unique for different fields, but is there a minimum number of first or senior author articles for life sciences?
Minimal. They should have the minimal requirement. It could be one first author paper for the starting grants, I would say. For the consolidator, if they can have one corresponding author. I'm not talking about senior because there's a consolidator, they should have already their own group, so they should have a paper. Okay, advanced, they should have one last author paper. I would say that's the minimum.
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks to our colleagues in terms of in the chat, you have details on the data of granted ERC grants and also the Cordis website, which I mentioned, where you can find details of all of our funded projects. David, I come back to you. If there are only 44 interviews per panel, if a panel is more competitive than another, how do you accommodate excellent applications if one panel has more submissions?
Well, that's, as I mentioned, the magic number of 44 is only a logistic reason. So in the past, there was a percentage of proposal. If a panel had a lot of submission, there was a percentage passing to step 2, but it was simply impossible to accommodate 50, 60 interviews. So in this case, with this new approach, The idea is the maximum is 44 and only the best 44 proposal will pass to the interview. The rest, if they are still excellent, they can immediately reapply. So there's no restriction.
Thanks, David. Jana, I come to you. Are researchers from Eastern Europe at a disadvantage because they may have less impressive CVs?
Oh la la, what a question. No, because you can make your CV impressive. And that's like in the recent years, the format of the CV is really becoming a bit more narrative. So that's why you have sections and you have space there to push, to stress something that you really, in the field in which you are really unique, in which you are really super successful, like you started your own course in a university, or you started a research program, you helped in a community development or something like that. So there's always space to a bit like hide the things where you are not as excellent as maybe others, and to push and make strong the parts that where you feel stronger. And it's like it's really up to you, and don't be afraid to just to really pinpoint the most important things. And if it's not a publication, then please focus on something else. But it's really up to you. It was much harder when the CV was based on publications and on a supervision of PhDs. Now you have really the space to make it unique. So I would not say it's a disadvantage.
Thanks, Jana. Very clear. David, I come to you because the next question, it was on the top. It's no longer on the top, but I come back to you on interviews. What's the relevance of the interview in general ranking and evaluation?
It's very relevant. The main aspect of the interview is to clarify anything that was not fully clear in your proposal, and addressing the question that has been posed by the panel members and the expert. So you have the interview is really a chance to reply to these questions, to clarify anything that wasn't clear, and it really makes a difference. Proposals that were passed to the interview, even with some questions or doubt, they go to the very top if the interview is fully successful and you address all the concerns of the panel.
Thanks, David. Jana, I come to you. Is it a disadvantage to specify a secondary panel? It's sometimes not recommended.
No, I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage. It really depends on the proposal. If it's interdisciplinary, then it might help you because you will get the expertise from the other field. If it's not really covering more disciplines, then it's better to stay in your field and don't ask for the secondary, or don't ask for the cross proposal evaluation. It's really hard to say. I would not say it's a disadvantage. On the other hand, it can be a big advantage when your proposal is looked on from different points of view. It really depends how interdisciplinary you feel you are standing with your proposal.
Thanks very much, Jana. I'm going to, I come to you then, because it's a question you've mentioned. If I have two PhDs in different fields, which one would be counted for starting grant?
First one, the first
Indeed.
one.
Indeed, first one. David, come to you. Can ERC cover 100% of my salary if I'm not employed on a permanent contract by the university?
Yes, again, this is something that you have to negotiate with the host institution. If your salary is included, you can include your salary within the grant.
Indeed, and we often see that whilst people apply for their salaries particularly in starting grants, once they're awarded, they may not need to, they may get a better offer from their host institution. They no longer need to take their salary from the grant. I come to you. Did I understand correctly that panel members read part B1 and later also B2, and external reviewers read both parts at the same time?
Indeed, both panel members that have usually, so at least 4 panel members have read part B1, part B2. The assignment at step 1 and step 2 is not always like 1-to-1. So you could have even more people that have read in part B1 in the interview. But yeah, and the external reviewers, they read both.
Thank you. Jana, if a C received during the evaluation in step 1 of the previous starting grant call, what's the possibility to be successful in future calls?
There is always a possibility, because if you got C, it means that you will receive the feedback first and you can use this feedback. And second, if you get C, it means that the panel felt that you need a bit more time to revise your proposal. So that's why you cannot reapply immediately. So it means that you have enough time to rewrite it, to think about it, or to start from scratch. But of course, you can be super successful in next calls because the panel will be different. You can make all the adjustments. So yes, I would highly recommend to resubmit.
Thanks, Jana. David, I come to you. I'm not clear if this question is about proposal writing or evaluation, but maybe you can take it from both sides. What about using artificial intelligence?
Indeed, for the writing or for the evaluation, we cannot hide that artificial intelligence is there. The ERC simply acknowledge this and encourage responsible use of artificial intelligence. So during writing, we cannot be a police checking everything, but we encourage responsible use of artificial intelligence. The same from our panel members, but they do write reviews.
Jana, I come to you. Is there any chance to change the host institute if the proposal gets funded?
Yes, and it's one of your rights, and it's absolutely okay if you change the host institution. It's your grant, and you can go anywhere in Europe or associated country.
And indeed, that's from the first day. You can even change on the first day of your grant if you're given a better offer, and you can use the portability that's built in to be able to change host institution. David, I come to you because I think the following question is more for Ina. How many people review the proposal in each step?
At step 1, there are minimum 3 reviewers, usually 4 to 5. It also depends if the proposal has some kind of interdisciplinarity and we ask a review from a different panel. So they're 4 to 5. At step 2, again, a minimum 4 reviewers, 3 to 4 reviewers within the panel, and remote referees. Remote referees, it's a little bit random. It can run from 2 to 7, so it's a bit more random, but certainly more than 6 in total.
Thanks very much, David. Ina, I'll come to you. What kind of costs are eligible in additional funds of an advanced grant? For example, are mouse costs or sequencing costs eligible?
The additional funds, they're all the same, and that's why the Scientific Council changed it a few years ago to 1 million for all starting, consolidated, and advanced. Mouse costs, and sequencing costs are normal costs that we see in the life sciences.
And indeed, if they can be costed within the full grant amount, then you can include them there. If it's required that you have to have such a significant cost that you need the additional €1 million, yes, then they're eligible in that respect, as Ina says. Jana, a question on eligibility. I got my PhD on the 5th of January 2023, so I reached the 2 years on the 5th of January 2025. Can I apply for the ERC starting grant, or should I wait until next year?
You can apply for the starting grant call 2025.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start again. About reapply application, could you expand on the penalty of not being able to apply for 2 years? How often does this happen?
So at step 1, there is no recommendation to the panel what A, B, and C they give. Okay, so if they decide, I mean, they cannot give the A grades are who goes to the interview, and if they want more than that, they can put an A uninvited, which is what David mentioned before. But they can put 0 C's, they can put all B's, they can put and A's. It's up to them. So how often does it happen? There's quite a lot of B's usually at step 1. So it happens because they can only send 44 people to the interview.
Thanks, Ina. I suggest we take another 5 questions and then we break for a very short time. David, I come to you. I have a main PhD supervisor and 4 other co-supervisors. Who counts as supervisors for publishing without the supervisor?
I would say it depends a lot on even on the culture, on the countries. The supervisor might appear in your publication for a long time. The really important thing is that the candidate demonstrate independence, not just by the list of co-authors, but any other activity. So demonstrate your independence, your independent thinking, and your capacity to work alone.
Thanks, David. Jana, can one apply for an advance grant if you don't have a permanent contract?
Yes, I guess so, because you have to have a letter from your host institution that they will support you and host you, but it's not like depending on the type of contract you have now. It's yeah, so it is possible.
Okay, thank you. And a question for you on eligibility. Is a medical certificate from a surgeon saying I was unable to work for 4 to 5 months enough to justify my eligibility to apply or extend my eligibility to apply?
I would think yes, but for these kinds of questions, I would recommend that you write an email to the ERC mailboxes that I have in my slides, because they can give you the best advice.
Indeed, and it's better to have that reassurance first of all, so that you can ensure that you get through eligibility. We're always happy to ask questions in that respect. I will take the 3 questions that we have on screen, and then we'll take a short break. David, do we need a Gantt chart?
Not required to have a Gantt chart, but as Ino said, yeah, please be clear on the timeline and the program, the research program. How long does it take for each? Certainly, Gantt chart is a nice summary.
Thanks, David. Jana, for a starting grant, can I have 2 host institutes in the same country?
You can have one host institution and another beneficiary. So like host institution is always one, but you can have other beneficiaries.
Thank you, very clear. And then maybe Jana, I'll come to you again, if this is okay, because you mentioned this before. To what extent do proposals from widening countries differ from other countries? What's the biggest differences?
Well, that would be a question for another webinar. So it's very hard to say. Some of them are excellent, some of them are not that excellent. Usually the biggest differences are in the grantmanship, as we would say. So in really like being able to deliver your message well, being able to write easily, to convey a message which is easy to read, for a generalist, but then in a B2 part specific enough. And yeah, well, sometimes there are problems with like lack of self promotion or something like that, but it's this all can be, you know, it can be made better during the draft exercises or mock interviews, mock writing. So it's really very hard to answer this question, because there is nothing like specific in which they would differ. Some of them are excellent for the first reading.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a very small reply to this topic? Sometimes, at least depending on the field, there might be some differences in the conceptions of the research. So the ERC aims for very innovative research. So sometimes we see, not only in widening countries, but in certain cultures, that the proposals are more adding to the previous knowledge instead of really building something from scratch, building something new.
Thanks, David. And then a final question which I'll take in this round, I think a really important question. If your resubmission is blocked for 1 or 2 years, does it concern the project or the researcher? Perhaps you can answer that.
The researcher.
Indeed. So to you as a person. I suggest now we take a short 5-minute break, and we start again at 20 past, when we'll have presentations. We've gone through the application process and the evaluation process, but key in writing your application is to address the ethics requirements. And my colleague Nicole Hein will talk about that, and also ensuring that the project is properly costed and well presented. And my colleague Catherine Merola will start on that. I noticed there were questions that we haven't had time to go through, which are really relating to individual circumstances for eligibility. And as Ino said, if you're unsure on eligibility, get advice from your NCP and get advice from us before applying. So as a question, I'm 7 years exactly since my PhD, which course should I apply for? Contact us, give us the details of the circumstances, and we'll be able to answer that. So we will take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 20 past 11 Brussels time, and look forward to the next set of presentations. Thank you to you all, and thanks to our speakers. And we'll now move on to equally important parts of writing your proposals. When you're looking at, we've talked about the application process. We talked about the evaluation process, but there's two essential elements which we haven't talked about yet, which will be covered in the next presentations, which is guidance on the requirements for research ethics and also the project budget. Again, remind you, if you want to ask questions, to do so via Slido. The link is given in the chat. You go to slido.com and add ERCEA as the password, and there we will take questions and answers again following the two presentations. So I'd like to give the floor first of all to Nicole Hein, who will give a presentation on the research ethics requirements when you're writing your proposal. So Nicole, the floor is yours. Nicole, you're currently muted. If you could put your presentation on slideshow so that we can see the full screen, please. If you click on slideshow on the screen, and you'll go to the first slide. Yep, perfect. You just need to unmute yourself, Nicole.
Just a second.
We hear you fine now.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Heine. I work as ethics officer in the ethics unit, and I review proposals in all scientific domains. I will walk you through what you need to do when you write your proposal in terms of the ethics. So first of all, I'd like to give you the key aspects of ethics in Horizon Europe. I will then give you some information as to what you need to include when you write your application. Then I'll be focusing on serious and complex ethics issues, because that's what the regulation also focuses on, and give you a flavor of the appraisal process, and then close with some more practical information. Why does it matter? Why do we do ethics in Horizon Europe? Well, first of all, we need to make sure at ERC that all the proposals we fund respect EU principles in research. Just a second. These are the EU ethical principles that need to be respected. But secondly, it is also a legal obligation that we have this process in place. And these legal obligations are defined in the Horizon Framework Programme, and they define also what eligible actions and ethical principles are, and give a broader outline of ethics in Horizon Europe. Now, what's in there for you? There is also something in there for you. Ethics is not just something that should be experienced or worked through as a burden. The ethics review is also there to can also help you to make your when you work through the ethics, you can contribute to the excellence in research, because you'll need to look into the details of the methodology. But so the ethics process there is designed to mainly protect research participants, researchers, animals, and the environment, society as a whole, from harm and undue risks. We at ERC also support you to adopt an ethics by design approach. And last but not least, I'd just like to mention that there are certain proposals which, if they may contravene ethical principles and do not comply with security rules, may be rejected from the evaluation at any time. Now, what's key in Horizon Europe as compared to the previous framework program is that it's based on there's a big focus on responsibility and trust. We do not check all the details of your ethics proposal anymore. But the main responsibility as to ethics lies with you, the researcher. The accountability lies with the signatory of the grant agreement, the host institution. And overall, we do take a trust and risk-based approach in the researchers and host institution to comply with the ethics principles. So what is new in Horizon Europe is that there's a focus on proposals which involve serious and complex ethics issues. So the guidelines now foresee that we focus on these, and these proposals will undergo an ethics assessment. Once they have undergone an ethics assessment, either through the process you have addressed all these, or in case you haven't, they become contractual obligation as part of the grant agreement. So what serious and complex ethics issues are, this you can find in the guidelines, but I will give you a short overview. So in general, these are ethics issues which violate fundamental rights of freedom or have the potential to result in significant harm, and also proposals which have particularly complicated methods or technologies which have not been sufficiently tested yet. Then there are issues that raise ethics issues, so proposals which raise ethics issues at scale. So this is when you have large amount of data, genetic data, sensitive data, and then complex and serious ethics issues can arise when you have intersectional ethics issues. When, to give you an example, when you have when you do research in non-EU countries with vulnerable populations, and so on. So here there might be ethics issues which exacerbate each other. Another important issues is important issue is misuse of a result of findings, and what can make a proposal serious or complex is a lack of awareness demonstrated when you have a proposal which has key ethical issues. This is also considered as a serious issue, and then this proposal, due to the lack of demonstrated awareness, would go also to an ethics assessment. So this is just to give you a flavor what they on a general level what they could be. Now, what's the ethic information we are looking for and which you have to provide in your application? So here we have a very specific guide from the Commission, which explains how you complete your self-assessment. So this goes, this provides for each ethics issue the background. It explains how you need to address this issue, and it also has a checklist which includes the information we are looking for and documents which either would need to be provided or kept on file. And here is a common myth: do I need to have all the ethics approvals in place before I start? No, you don't. It's sufficient that you that you indicate in the narrative what the approvals are that you will need to seek, when you expect to obtain them. So this is sufficient at that stage. You do not need to have a complete already approved a project, as it were. This can come as a later stage. So how do you identify the ethics issues? So the how to complete your ethics self-assessment is a how-to guide. So nothing more and nothing less. It's there to help you. So there are 4 good questions which can help you in identifying the ethics issues. So you need to keep in mind what the objective of your proposal is. Is it in itself ethical? You need to think through the methodology you are using. For example, if your proposal has an interventional clinical trial, what are the requirements you need to fulfill? And there we have, of course, the clinical trials regulation you would need to comply with. Another important aspect to think through is what materials and sources are you using, and how have you obtained these? So this, for example, in the area of human cells, you need to explain how these were obtained, where these obtained ethically, and you need to describe this. Another question to think through is what the potential impact of your research could be. So so in the ethics self-assessment, so you have the guidelines, you need to first read them. Then you have the ethics issue table, which guides you, which is, as it were, a tick. You tick the ethics issues that are involved, and then you need to complement this in the ethics self-assessment, which is in part A. In part A, we ask you to describe the ethical dimension of the objectives methodology and the likely impact. And secondly, then you need to also describe how you will comply with the ethical principles and flesh out the relevant legislation. So this is, so you have just the table. It's to like give us a broad map on what the issues are, and then you need to complement this in part A. So this needs to be really in one part of one part. So if you already have the some authorizations, you can also include them as annex, and you're encouraged to do so. And again, this needs to be of all of one piece with the whole application. If, for example, you supposedly prepare, you give us a proposal which will have lots of artificial intelligence, you also need to address that in the ethics information you're giving. It needs to be of one piece with the scientific part of your proposal. So all of this will make for a more effective clearance process. Remember, I mentioned that one point which can make a given proposal a complex, a serious proposal is the lack of awareness. So if you're likely to have serious and complex ethics issues, you need to directly address them, as otherwise the whole process might just be taking longer. So one recommendation we have is you need to start thinking about the ethics while designing your proposal. So do not perceive it as something you add on later, right? Or we'll take care of that later. It needs to be one integral of one integral piece, really. Now, what we also recommend is it might be that there are ethics issues in which you just happen to not be the expert. Let's say you are you're a specialist in life sciences, but you also have another part of your proposal which is not your main domain. So do get help with seek help from within your institution, seek advice from colleagues with ethics expertise. Within your community, also within hospital ethics committees, and so on, data protection officers, and so on. So What's new in Horizon Europe is also there is more use of ethics advisors and ethics boards. So they are appointed, and we may decide, or the panel of independent experts advises ERC in some instances to appoint an ethics advisor who is to help you to ensure throughout the process, throughout the project, that your proposal is aligned with EU principles. And so you also need to think about, if you have a serious and complex case, you also need to think when you start working with that person, you can also choose to right from the start contact one. And you also would need to budget for one. The ethics advice from external advisors does not come from free, so this is very important. Right, so the ethics in your application, so the ethics issue table. So these are the main areas that it includes. So you need to go all through that. And the main mistake you can make is to just leave it blank and not engage with this ethics issue table. Pretend that there are no issues, ethics issues, when in fact there are. So this is just to give a broad map of the issues. It's there to help you also to then describe to describe all of that also in the narrative. So there are some research activities that are not eligible for funding under Horizon Europe. Those are the ones directed at human cloning for reproductive purposes, research activities intended to modify the genetic makeup of human beings that could make such changes heritable, and research activities intended to create human embryos solely for the purpose of research or stem cell procurement. Including the technique of somatic cell nuclear transfer, and research that leads to the destruction of human embryos. And last not least, research which does not have an exclusive focus on civil application is excluded currently. And the overall principle is that no funding shall be granted, neither within nor outside the EU, for research activities that are prohibited in all the member states. So no activity shall be funded in the member states where such activity is forbidden. So you need to check with what is forbidden in your member state. So some do's and don'ts. So do not assume that the ethics issues depend on and are confined to the general domain of your research for which you're in the panel you're applying. If you think the proposal involves ethics issues, do not hide it. Do tick them in the EIT. We will discover this anyway. So do not leave, and most importantly, do not leave the ethics self-assessment part blank. It's essential to have, in addition to the ethics issue table, an ethics narrative, in particular when your proposal is likely to involve serious and complex ethics issues. Now, there are, of course, proposals which have no ethics issues. I'm thinking of mathematics, organic chemistry. These are unlikely to have ethics issues. So, and coming to the do's, when you have a doubt, just tick the ethics issue and elaborate this in the narrative. You can also say, we need to still verify what is the case. Be open about it. So again, if your proposal is likely to involve serious and complex ethics issues, do seek advice and budget for an ethics advisor, and seek support in your host institution and in your national contact. You might also want to just contact your national contact point.
Nicole, we're nearing the time for your presentation, so if you can maybe...
Okay. So serious and complex ethics issues. So human participants, for example, where you have medical invasive studies, might be one. Ethics issue, ethics proposals involving special categories of personal data, animals in particular, where work with non-human primates is involved. So non-EU countries where there's a risk of ethics dumping, and I'm rushing through this. In the era of artificial intelligence, you need to think through the potential impact on human autonomy and decisions. All of this is very well described in the guide on serious and complex ethics issues. So just to give you a flavor of what happens, so you've filled out your proposals, you've submitted it, then we internally go through all the proposals that have been retained for funding. And so there are proposals without or with just simple ethics issues. And now the beauty of Horizon Europe is that we can immediately clear these. And you can help us with this, providing a well-detailed ethics self-assessment. Then we can clear immediately, and off you go. You will receive a clearance detailing what you will need to take care of throughout the duration of the grant. If there is the potential to have complex or serious cases, a panel of independent ethics experts will look at that. They will then either have just observations, and so they will give you an analysis of what the issues are, what you will need to take care of. So you will have a map, what you need to take care of, and documents to be kept on file. Now, this is very important. We're not asking for them at that stage, but we may at any stage during the duration of the grant or afterwards ask you for this document, which are detailed in the reports which you will be receiving. So if after this round there are still questions that need to be fulfilled, you will receive another request to answer, and so another panel will need to look at them. And there are certain proposals which are mandatory to go for an assessment, and these are proposals, for example, involving human embryonic stem cells. So here you can, just to show you that, so after the pre-screening, which we do internally, we have 70% clearance, and then comes the ethics screening, ethics assessment. This is just to give you a flavor of also the timelines with which you may expect for this process. So practical recommendations: provide the requested information at each step of the process in a clear and structured way. You need to make it easy for us as well. Do not provide us with as much information as possible from grants which are not related, just to demonstrate you have experience. You need to just provide us the information that is necessary for this specific grant. If you have questions as to the report which you will be receiving, do not hesitate to contact us. We're here to help you. Feel free to schedule a call. We're there to help. If there are some documents which are in a non-EU official language, you should provide an English translation of this. All official EU languages. But you can provide documents in all other official EU languages. The beauty of Horizon Europe is again that we have a lot of documents which you just need to keep on file. You need to reference them. You do not need to provide everything, but you need to keep everything on file once that was necessary throughout the whole process. So at the end of the review, there are only the grants which still have serious and complex ethics issues will have contractual obligations, and one contractual obligation may be that you have an ethics advisor or an ethics board, and that person will report. So that's just to give you a flavor what happens also right at the start. But still, it's still pre-granting. So here, again, part A and part B, the ethics issue table, ethics self-assessment, and ethics analysis are essential. They help us to make it easier for you. So these are the main issues I wanted to talk about. Do seek help at an early stage, also internally. It's experience shows that if you engage early onwards and collaborate closely with your host institutions, the likelihood is that this will go short and not be a lengthy process is much, much higher. Here are some useful links. I tried to give you in a nutshell what we're looking for, where you can find the information. So here, how to complete your self-assessment, and the guidelines on identifying serious and complex ethics issues are the main documents. Do not hesitate to reach out if you need any help or support with ERC help. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I can ask that you stop to share your screen. All of the links which Nicole has in her presentation, we'll share the presentations afterwards so that you'll be able to access all of those. Again, remind you, if you have questions, to submit those by Slido. I'd like to give the floor immediately to Catherine Merola, who will talk through a very important part of the project, which is how you put together your budget. So, Catherine, the floor is yours.
Okay, I think you can hear me. Yes?
We hear you fine, Katrina. We don't see your presentation just yet.
Yes, the presentation is on?
Not yet, not yet. So you need to share the screen with the presentation. We see the WebEx screen currently.
Yes, wait a second. Is it okay now?
Just put it on slideshow and then.
Yes. Do you see it?
It's coming up to slideshow. Just put it on full screen and we'll be fine, Kathleen.
Okay, I guess now it's okay, right? Okay, sorry for that. Okay, so now what I would like to do, given the time, is maybe not to go through all the different cost categories, but to give a general overview and some tips. So what you see on the screen is how the budget looks like when you have to fill in together before the submission of your proposal. So what you see is different column, different budget categories, personnel, subcontract, purchase cost, internal invoice, indirect cost. What is important here is that you know what you want to do, in the proposal, you know the work that you want to carry out. You need to think what are the resources that you need to do the job. So how many people do I need in my staff? Do I need specific pieces of equipment? Do I need to foresee travel costs because there will be some presentation at conferences, there will be some field work, etc., etc., etc. So think carefully of everything that you need as resources. And then if you are the researcher, please work together with the host institution and with the financial and legal department of the host institution to put the correct estimated amount for those resources. Here in the table, you see that I have highlighted indirect cost column. This is because the indirect cost, it is a flat rate of 35% of the direct cost that you have encoded in the table. And you don't need to justify it. So it's calculated automatically. It's on top of the direct cost minus subcontract and internal invoice. The total eligible cost in this table is also calculated automatically. It will take into consideration all the direct costs that you have encoded plus the indirect cost. And in red, you see that I have highlighted requested EU contribution because this is not calculated automatically. And it's very important that you do not forget to fill it in because, of course, this is the money that you want to ask to the agency should the project be retained for funding. Okay, so please, a tip here, don't put percentages, don't put Q value. What you have to put is the full amount in euro of what you would like to request. Here, I'm not going back to this. You know that there is a ceiling per type of calls, plus, of course, any additional funding that you think is really needed for the project. This is what I just told you. Just a word about synergy call. I know that this is not the main topic of this presentation, but the table, the budget table in the system, in the IT tool will be slightly different. And actually, you will be invited to fill in an Excel table with all the same information that you show in the previous slide, that you saw in the previous slide. But this will be an Excel table specifically for synergy call. You will have all the information necessary as soon as the call opens, of course. And so I just told you what you need to do is really think through the resources that you need for the project and then start estimating the cost for each resources. Once you have done that, it's very important that you explain why you need those resources, okay? And to do that, you have a table, you have a specific box in the IT tool called the resource section, and you will explain there the resources that you need and the cost related to those resources. It is very important to justify ideally each cost category, because of course the panel will have a look at this budget, at the explanation, and the panel might decide that some resources are not reasonable or excessive or not in line with the work that you propose to do. For just a note here, for advanced call, actually the box, the resource section will be a little bit different. It is a little bit different. It's not just one single text box. It's divided in 6 text boxes. But if you have a look at the information for applicant or at the video that was just mentioned in the first presentation, there is the explanation, all the explanation that you need to deal with it. So personal cost, just for you to know, you have 5 staff categories there. I just want to point to two elements. PI category, please note that it is only to budget the personal cost of the principal investigator. I know that sometimes the principal investigator will work with very senior staff, high-ranking collaborators, but the personal cost of those people should not go under that column for the PI, just for then you can put it on the senior staff, for example. Other personal costs, Usually what we find there is laboratory assistant. It could be specific project manager for the project. This is the type of cost that you can then budget under other personal costs. And what you do, you know more or less, you ask the financial department of your institution more or less how much cost the type of personnel that you want to work with annually. You know for how long, or you estimate for how long those people will work on the project, 2-3 years, and for what percentage, full-time, part-time, and based on that, you of course estimate the personnel cost and you encode the figures in the table. This is exactly what I have just told you, so you will have all the information once you receive the slides. Just, I don't want to spend time here for advanced grant, just for you to know the way you think the budget and the resources is exactly the same as any other type of grants. But of course, there is a little difference in the way we ask the information for personal cost. And it's just that we want you to present it with person months and the total average. And this is because, of course, the panel is going to assess specifically the personal cost. And just a little advice there, if we also have the ERC historical data personal cost dashboard available for applicants to have a look, to compare, and if really the cost that they have encoded in the table is much higher than what we have in the dashboard, you are invited to give a word of explanation. Please do read carefully the information for applicant, because there you have all the information that you need. Purchase cost is a very wide category composed of travel, equipment, and other goods and services, such as consumables and publication. And there, of course, it's exactly the same as for personal cost. Think what you need for the project and then start estimating the cost. If it's travel, you know that you would need 10 travel per postdoc to present the results over the 5 years of the project. Please do mention it in the resource section and put the estimated cost accordingly. For equipment, there, what we have in mind, of course, is the equipment that will be depreciated over the lifetime, the useful life of the pieces of equipment. So assets that are specific for the project. Then publication, I think you already, there was already a mention that please do not forget to foresee a little amount for publication open access fees in your project. Other additional direct costs, very often in that category, what we see is the cost for the certificate on financial statement, for example, or the creation of the website. So costs that you cannot put in any other categories. So this is just the explanation of what I have just told you. And something that is new in the work program. So do check the work program, first of all, to know if that option exists for a specific call. But as I just said, the equipment should be, the eligible cost actually for the equipment is the depreciation cost. We do not reimburse the full amount of the purchase cost, okay? There is an exception in the work program for equipment purchased specifically for the action. And in very specific cases, well justified, you might ask for the full capitalized cost. And so you will encode the full amount and not just the depreciation cost in the budget table. But please pay attention that this pieces of equipment needs to be listed in the proposal. You need to explain very carefully why you think that you really need to be reimbursed the full amount for those pieces of equipment, and it will be assessed. And we say it's very exceptional that we would accept those costs. What we have in mind with that provision is actually to allow very specific cases where one of the goals of the project is to build a prototype, and we know that the prototype probably will be depreciated very, very late in the course of the project. Okay. internal invoice, I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's very well explained in the annotated grant agreement if you have the case. The only thing that we want to point out here is that internal invoice means invoice between one department to another department within the same institution, okay, not with an external provider. And it qualifies only as internal invoice if the invoice is based on unit cost. Okay, but please, there is a very well explained chapter in the annotated grant agreement. And then I want to conclude with additional funding. So here, there was already a mention before that the additional funding is actually the amount that you will request above the ceiling. So if you are applying for a starting grant, you know that you can request up to 1.5 million. And in some cases, you might need an additional money, so above that 1.5 million, up to 1 million for individual grants, up to 4 million for synergy grant. It should be requested in the proposal, okay? Additional funding is not granted afterwards. And here you have the 4 categories in which you may request the additional funding. So this is according to the work program. And so here there was a question about, I think it was some kind of experiment. So animal husbandry, of course, here you see that there is a specific category called other major experimental and fieldwork cost, where you could indeed claim those costs above 1 million. What is really important is that you identify the category in the resource section when you draft your resource section, and you explain very carefully why you need that extra money, why you cannot carry out the project within the normal envelope. If it's a starting grant within the 1.5 million, but you really need to purchase, for example, a major piece of equipment for the project, and then you explain. It will be assessed by the panel, and they will decide if it's fully justified or partially justified or not justified at all. So just pay attention to that when you draft your resource section. And oh, sorry, and this is it. So I try to do it quite quickly.
Catherine, thank you very much. I think that was a very clear and comprehensive overview.
Okay.
I can ask if you can just stop sharing
Yes.
your screen. And then I'd ask my colleagues, I know there's been a lot of questions coming in. If I can ask my colleagues that perhaps we can, if it's possible, we can take some of the questions relating to, to resources and ethics to start off with. And I know there are still some questions which are coming in to our previous speakers as well. So if I can ask all of the presenters if they can turn their microphones on. And I start with the first question, which I see is for you, Catherine, on personnel. Do I need to describe the costs every year, or is it enough to put the total relating to the percentage working time or to person months?
No, just put the total. So the description in the resource section, actually, you are limited, you know, in terms of content. So just briefly describe, and you can put the percentage of time, of working time, yes.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And then again, a question for you. How should I calculate my salary? Do I need to consider the salary I have now in my country?
So there you will discuss with your host institution, because it's not only the salary, the net salary that you have in your pocket. Huh? So it's actually the gross salary. And there, I think only the host institution really knows the total amount that can be budgeted.
Indeed, and there's many people who are participating in this webinar as the support staff in host institutions, and they should be your first point of contact. Yes. In that respect. The next question is very similar, Catherine. How's the personnel cost of the PI calculated?
It's the same. Huh? So there is no difference in personnel cost. There is no difference between the PI and the other staff categories. It's really gross salary plus some other elements. Please do check with your your institution, and also what is written in the annotated, because there are some specific rules also for personnel cost.
Catherine, a lot of questions for you. This one, in order to reach my aim, I need a special development achieved in another field, which can be done by a collaborator. Can I assign funds to this collaborator?
Yes. Yes, so then it will depend on the type of collaboration that you have. Huh? So if it's just fees for the collaborator to participate as experts. Of course, if your host institution do have that kind of policy, it's fine. If it's a fundamental part of the project, then maybe you need to add it as an additional beneficiary. So there you need to think a little bit how the project will be built.
Thank you. Next question, if I can turn, I see Ino, David, and Jana. Maybe if I can turn to you, Jana. Following up on deliverables, do we need to include work packages?
It was
no.
me who was answering this question before.
Sorry. Yes, Ino, go ahead.
I just want to say that because you don't need to include work packages. You can call them whatever you want, objectives, aims, work packages. You can do, but your project has to have some structure.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, it's not a deliverable. The only deliverable is the data management plan.
Very clear. So it's a way of, you need to segment your project in a way which shows that it's the structure of it, the timeline of it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a work package approach.
No.
Catherine, maybe I can come to you, and also maybe to Ina and Jana. Do you have to be employed at the institution at the time of application? Is that favorable? The example would be moving to a widening country.
So no, I think you don't need to be employed by the host institution. It was replied before, right? You just need the commitment letter of the host institution.
Indeed, indeed. And as we mentioned before, the whole point of the grants is they are portable. And so if you want to move to a widening country and you're not applying with them, you can do that subsequently as well. I think this relates to a question that you mentioned before. Can you explain the concept of feasibility better with some examples?
So, for example, like if you're using a technique that and you're applying it on something different, then feasibility could be that you show that you have used this technique before and you have some experience with this. So even if it's in another area, it's still something like that. Or if the other way around, if you're using a completely new technique, but you know really well the area, then you can say, okay, I'm going to collaborate with this person and I'm going to send one of my postdocs there, and we have already collaborated before, so then this seems like it's going to be so I guess that example, but
Okay.
maybe Jana and David have others.
David, Jana, anything you wanted to add? No, I don't see it. So I think that was very clear. To our audience, I know we're running a little over time, but we'll try and take as many of the questions as we can, because I know this is important that we answer as much as we can. Jana, if I could come to you for COG, how many publications should the PI administrate?
That's a very badly put question. It's not about the number of publications. We said that we are downplaying the quantitative images, so there's no number. Plus, this really differs a lot in between the disciplines. Some disciplines, they don't have publication, they have books or they have other expeditions. I don't know what. So you cannot say how many papers for COG. If you have 3 and they have been written by you and they have been influential for the discipline, then it's okay. Then you can have 20 and they are in like their importance is not that high. So it's really cannot say. I don't know if Ino or David can help me, but this is really a question that cannot be easily answered.
Indeed, it also depends so much on the field.
Yeah.
Again, each scientific field has a different culture, different productivity, average productivity. So it's really difficult. There's no magic number.
Yeah.
Indeed, it's telling your story. The next question is on eligibility. As I mentioned before, when you have a very specific question on your eligibility, check it with your host institution, check it with your NCPs, and check it with us if needs be. And we will let you know, particularly when it's unclear how, in this case, exactly 7 years since finishing your PhD. So check it with us to make sure that you're applying to the right course, the right call. Catherine, maybe I can come to you on the question afterwards. We talked about this additional budget. So costs such as sequencing costs or costs for animal experiments can be part of the extra 1 million budget.
Yes, so this is a specific category, just something that was not in the slide. You cannot include personal costs. So it should really be the cost for the experiments or the sequencing in itself, and just explain carefully why it is additional okay, why you need the extra money.
Indeed, why it can't be included in the standard grant amounts. And maybe I take the next question, following question, because it's very similar. Can we ask for the extra 1 million during application, or is something to apply in extraordinary circumstances?
So you have to ask for it at the moment when you submit your application. Afterwards, it's too late because the panel needs to see it, because the panel will assess if it's needed for the project.
Thank you, very clear. David, can I come to you? What's proving scientific independence? Do I need to have a publication really alone, or publications with external collaborators, not my postdoc supervisor?
I'm sorry to repeat myself, but it really depends on the field and on the culture of each research field. Certainly, publications, it doesn't have to be sole author publication, but really make it very clear that if you are the first author, what was your role? And even if you're not the first author, in the new template for the CV, you have the possibility to explain what was your contribution to a paper, even if there is 1,000 authors, what was your specific contribution? Depending on the field, also there are other evidences. I'm just thinking about my own field. If you are the main PI of a research expedition on a cruise, on any kind of a field trip, and you are the coordinator, the organizer, that also demonstrates that you're able to be in charge.
Thanks, David. Catherine, back to you. Can we have some examples of what can go into other additional direct costs?
Yes, so I mentioned the creation of a website, for example, or the certificate on financial statement cost, but it could also be the payment to patients when they participate to surveys, for example.
Clear. Thank you very much. And again, another question for you. Should personnel costs of staff that work on the project, but whose salary we cover by other sources, be included on the main budgetary table? So they're part of the project, but they're not financed by the project.
So there we need to be careful. So in principle, the personnel cost that you will budget in the table should be for the staff that is employed by the host institution or seconded to the host institution, okay, where the host institution will reimburse the cost. But then you see the costs are registered in the accounting system of the host institution. There are an exception. It will be too long to explain, but there might be in-kind contribution provided free of charge when you have professors, for example, appointed by the local government, and they do work for the host institution, but the host institution do not pay the salary. You explain that in the proposal, and under certain conditions, you can claim those costs as well. You can budget those costs as well. Okay.
Thank you. A question to Nicole. For a technical question on ethics, how do you refer to the page where the ethics issue is elaborated, when it's in the Part A boxes and when it's in a separate annex?
Just say, so it's not that important actually, where that you have the exact page number, right? But so when you go through the ethics table, just say page Part A or Part B, but make sure that you cover all the ethics issues in the narrative. So that's really Part A, right?
Thank you very much, Nicole. Maybe I can come to you because it's relating to practice in panels. In the past, project or management or admin costs have been cut from ERC projects. Is this still the case?
We tell the panels that, of course, that these costs are completely eligible, that it's up to the PI how they're going to do their panel. It is true that sometimes panels, they do not really like them, but they are eligible. And as long as they are in the maximum, I think you should put it, because you should spend your time doing research rather than administration.
Very clear. Then is there a rule that we need to hire a PhD student, or can I hire a junior technician or engineer who does not work towards their PhD? David?
It's not compulsory to list PhD student. It is somehow advisable, let's say. So it depends on the scheme you're applying for. One of the goals of starting grant is to start building your own research group. it wouldn't make much sense if you just hire people that are senior, because you are building your first research group. So it makes more sense to request a PhD student, but it's not a rule.
And you might get the easier funding for PhD students from other funding in your country, so it's not a criterion.
Clear. Thank you. I'm aware we significantly over time, 15 minutes over time, we have 50 questions outstanding. I would suggest that we, if it's okay with the panel members, we spend another 5 minutes answering the questions, and then the remaining questions we will answer in writing and put them on the page of the webinar so that everyone does have their question answered. Catherine, a question for you. Is there a maximum percentage of subcontracting that could be considered optimal? I think that's it. Yes.
Now, usually there is not a lot of subcontracting in ERC grant. It might happen and it depends. The amount will depend on the need of the project.
Okay. Then, Jana, if I can come to you, if I present an idea that's been worked on by me in the last years, but this idea is extended and approved and new in the landscape, is that incremental research?
I would say no, but I'm not the one who's evaluating your proposal, so it will depend on the idea of the panel. Of course, if you add something new and improve, and it's new in the landscape of the research, then it should not be incremental. It doesn't sound incremental.
Clear. Catherine, question on you on students. Can you clarify which type of contracts, scholarships or other types, are possible to include in the students' costs?
So here what is important is that you have a contract that looks like an employment contract. But I would advise to go and look in the annotated, because there is a chapter dedicated to that and the eligibility condition for scholarship. So it's better that you check directly in the text.
Okay, thank you. And maybe go to the question at the end of the screen. So we have a question to Nicole. Do we need to discuss ethics issues also in parts B1 and B2?
No, you do not need to discuss them there. However, you need to provide for the elements to be there, meaning be clear on the methodology, on the kind of material you use, if you use human embryonic stem cells or not, whether you use induced pluripotent stem cells. You will also be asked in the ethics issue tables, and there is a space for it in part A. However, be as clear as possible on the methodology, because this can have an ethics. We also read that part and to check what the ethics issues are. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Nicole. Then a question I would take to the 3 scientific officers. One of you choose to take it. I know synergy grants are not the focus today, but for these two, you have to have PIs from at least 2 institutions, different institutions. Does having more increase the chance of success?
I would say no. From all the synergy grants I have, synergy interviews I have observed, no, you can be all in the same institution. You can be in 4 host institutions. You can be, the important thing is the synergy. Yeah.
Indeed, I think that's very clear. Advisory boards. Is it important to include an advisory board in the project if it's an interdisciplinary one? David?
Advisory board.
I think this is an SH thing.
Perhaps, maybe Jana.
Look, it's not a condition. It's nice to have it, but it's not like working for you or against you. So it's something that looks good, but it's not necessary.
Okay, thanks, Jana.
That relates to an ethics advisory board. It could also relate to an ethics advisory board. I'm not sure, but so it depends. If there are a lot of cross-sectional issues, and if it makes it a serious and complex case, you might want to foresee an ethics advisory board.
Thank you. I come to the second question on the list here, because I think it's quite an important one. Catherine, how do I indicate in-kind contribution in the budget table? For example, a PhD student funded by the host institution.
Yeah, well, if it's a PhD student funded by the host institution, it's not an in-kind contribution, it's actually your staff. So, but when you do have in-kind contribution, you just encode the cost as if it were the own cost of the host institution.
Clear. And then another question on budget, Catherine. If our country does not have a high performance computer cluster, it's just gone off the screen. How do we put that in place? Is that through depreciation?
Yes, if it must be recorded as an asset in your accounting system, it's a piece of equipment, and you will have to and the budget only the depreciation of that piece of equipment in the budget table.
Thank you. And we're approaching the time I suggested. I take one last question. The rest we will answer in writing, so you will all receive an answer to your questions, but quite an important one. David, I come to you. Who will take part in the interview?
The interview takes place with the panel, so the evaluating panel, the list of about 14, 15 panel members of the panel where your proposal is evaluated, not the remote reviewers.
Thank you, very clear. Okay, unfortunately, I think we'll run out of time. I realize there's a good number of questions which are still to be answered, but we will ensure that we answer those in the coming days, and we'll put our answers in writing on the webpage for the webinar, so you'll be able to see those directly. I'd like to thank you all for participating in this workshop. It's great to see that we had such interest in this process. We will be running other webinars on the work program for 2025 in due course, and you'll receive information on that. And I'm sure you will also be able to attend webinars and other events organized by the NCPs in your countries, and so you should look for those as well. I'd like to close by thanking the speakers. I'd like to thank Ino, Jana, David, Nicole, and Catherine. I'd also like to thank my colleagues Rosaria, Laura, and John for all the work that they've done in putting together this webinar and in managing all of the things behind the scenes. So I see a lot of thanks coming up from the audience. I think this is very much well appreciated. Thank you very much to all for your attention, and we look forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you then. Bye-bye.